Thank you for tuning in for Council of Geeks for our first ever panel discussion. I'm going to be joined today by Paul Scavito and Ryan Daly, the co-creators of the webcomic Red and Green. Thanks for showing up, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Now today we're going to be talking in general terms about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So why don't we start with the obvious question. Favorite Marvel movie so far?
It's really hard, but I'd probably say Captain
America.
Really?
The Avengers would be a very close second, but in terms of just a solo action-adventure superhero movie, I really enjoyed Captain America. So much so that I think we both agree on this, the first hour of the movie before he gets his powers is one of the more compelling superhero origin stories.
I think the fact that they decided to go period with it was really, really important. And also just, it looked cinematically, it just looked really good. I thought Steve Rogers' character portrayal, as Ryan said, was really good. One of the things I think that they got right with him in that movie is that the sort of genuineness of him, of the character, and that he's eager to please. He wants to do the right thing. The scene in the alley, where they sort of established that motif for him that he's going to keep getting up. The fake grenade scene, just those little character points. And
he's a different Captain America, and I think Captain America is different than a lot of Marvel superheroes or a lot of Marvel characters. He's a good person. And I think Marvel heroes, for the most part, are all kind of anti-heroes. Not in the way that the sort of 90s defined the term anti-hero, which is a good guy who's willing to do really bad things, who's willing to kill people, and a sort of bad role model, but is still sort of portrayed as a hero. No, an anti-hero in the true sense that you wouldn't expect somebody with this kind of personality flaw to be the good guy. Right. If you're going to give somebody a $1 billion war suit that can fly and fire missiles, is your first choice the alcoholic womanizer with a high narcissism? No, probably not. If you've got somebody who can do all of the things that a spider can do, you're going to give that to the teenage science nerd? That wouldn't be my first choice, right. But that's also what made them so great characters. So the fact that the movie did portray Captain America as not necessarily having those character flaws, that he was as good as you would expect him to be.
Let's back up and actually get a little bit of context with this. Your sort of history with reading comic books, Marvel in particular, was it something you did more as a kid? Do you still keep up with it? Where does that all fall with you guys?
Definitely a kid. I read more. And then a friend essentially waterboarded me with comics for a while.
To bring it back
so I got back into the world of Marvel. I wasn't really reading for a long time, but
I started reading my first comics in the late 80s and never really stopped for a short period of time, or I would drift into sort of more sophisticated graphic novels. But part of me always came back to the superhero genre, just something about the American mythology of that I couldn't really find in any other form of entertainment or literature. I couldn't find those characters or that types of story in books or movies until the last decade or so.
Captain America, we are going to be going to see that movie opening night, and we'll be having something on here about that. But going into it, and now I have to ask, since we know Toby Jones is coming back to play Armin Zola, what are you hoping for in terms of how he's going to look?
The geeky part of me wants to see his face on a robot's chest, like with a video camera as the head. Right. I want that classic sort of crazy Jack Kirby Arnim Zola. I'm sure it won't happen if it doesn't make sense.
I don't know. Marvel's willing to do weird stuff.
Yeah, and he's not the only character from that movie who's making a comeback appearance in this one, as I've heard. So we'll see. I don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah, that gets a little bit into spoilers, and we'll try to avoid that. But looking ahead to what we know is coming down the pike, we've got Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I have to wonder, for me, it's like they made the decision that they were going to do Thanos, and then somebody in a meeting said, well, if we're doing Thanos, I guess we have to open up the whole galactic cosmic side of Marvel. What property do we have that could do that? Guardians of the Galaxy works.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that was part of the Avengers hits, right? part of me wants to believe they just greenlit everything that was in development, and they're like, "What have we got?" And it's like, we've got a raccoon with a rocket launcher. Like, yeah, just go. Everything's a go. And there was a script. That's the more cynical side of me, I guess. But
I nearly did a spit take when I heard it was like a wait, what? Because I very well versed in the Marvel comics, and even that was one where I was like, I've read a few of these, and I wasn't crazy about them. And even thinking, I was like, okay, if they're going to open this up to the Marvel cosmic side of the universe, there's 3 or 4 characters I would think of before these guys.
I would think Adam Warlock myself.
Warlock,
personally,
Captain Marvel, the guy named Captain Marvel, he's a Kree space fighter. I think one of the things that did impress me was the fact that Marvel did seem, with the trailer that came out, they did seem to acknowledge the fact that you're not supposed to have ever heard of these guys. They are just this crazy ragtag bunch, and part of that is the humor factor that they're going for.
Yeah,
right.
But who's a character that you would like to see appear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we haven't seen yet and has not been announced or even really hinted at? Whether they just show up as a cameo or whether they get their own movie. Who do you want to see?
Go ahead, say it.
Squirrel Girl, hands down. I've got the entire story laid out in my head. How it would work.
So we'll put your email up on this. Marvel can drop you a line.
Right.
Wow, that's hard to follow. I would like to see fewer white men be the stars of these movies. I would really love to see a Black Panther movie, and I think that's been in development for a long time.
There's been talk off and on for a while.
I hope that comes true, just because I would like to see that. He's one of my favorite characters. I'm not ever sure why. I just always like the character. He's sort of the closest thing to Marvel's equivalent of Batman. I would really love to see a female-driven hero movie. Give Black Widow a solo movie. It's the easiest thing in the world. You take one of the Bourne movies and you just put Scarlett Johansson in it.
And everybody watches that.
Right,
Yes,
exactly.
of course.
See, for me, I know exactly who it would be. It would be She-Hulk.
But like
I love
the single green female storyline where she's the lawyer.
Right, it's Ally McBeal. It's a David E. Kelly story, except
Exactly.
with the giant
Doing superhero law.
That would just be awesome.
If there's one complaint that I could level against the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's also one of the things that I think makes it so successful, is that all of the movies feel very similar in sort of, they're all the same genre. Even Captain America, as a World War II story, as a sort of war story, was a superhero story. Thor, you got a character coming down from a different level, but it wasn't really a fantasy. It wasn't a Lord of the Rings or Hobbit movie. It was a superhero story. It had the same kind of genre. Having said that, I think the next Captain America movie has the opportunity to sort of break that sort of genre mold. I think the way when The Dark Knight first came out, the way people said it's not just a superhero movie, it's more of a crime epic like The Godfather or like Heat. Just happens to have a guy running around in a cape. I think this Captain America movie, The Winter Soldier, will have some of the similar things said about it. I think they're really building it. It is going to be a conspiracy movie. It is going to be a political thriller. Just happens to have a guy wearing tights and throwing the flag on the shield.
Well, I think the thing is, Marvel really kind of has to start finding ways to tell stories that aren't necessarily just superhero stories, because, eventually, as much as I hate to say it, audiences are going to start getting bored with this. So if this is your staple of characters that you have to work from, you got to start finding other genres to work in.
Thanks so much for stopping by, guys.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Red and green.
It's online.
All right.